Now that we have completed the first arc, I wanted to provide with my thoughts, theories and impressions before moving to the next arc. So before I begin, I wanted to mention that during my playthrough I did not take any notes, since the game said that there's no need to think overly hard about any of this, and that I should quietly accept all that is about to happen. So I did. But since there were so many hints in the story so far, I will make sure to take notes from now on, as to not miss anything. I'm not sure how in-depth this video is going to be, and it may not be as in-depth as I would have liked, but I will try my best. The way I'm going to structure this video is, although it's unscripted, I'm going to make a recap, and as I go along on that recap, I will discuss the characters and the events. So with that stuff out of the way, let's begin. As the game begins, we get introduced to the head of the family, Kinzo, his doctor Nanjo, and his head servant Genji. And it's immediately clear that Kinzo is very proud, very stubborn, and is extremely obsessed with Beatrice, to the point where he doesn't even care what happens to himself. All he wants is to see Beatrice's smile again. Then we are introduced to Battler, and through his eyes we meet the rest of his family, for the most part on the airport, then on the boat towards the island of Rikkenjima, where they all gather for the yearly conference. And since Kinzo's health is going downhill, people expect Kinzo to die and for them to inherit his vast fortune. People were settling in to their rooms, and aside from the tension between the family members, not much was happening. And my first impressions of the characters, especially the siblings, were that they all seemed so very focused on the fortune, which in hindsight made sense since they all had financial trouble. But they all seemed so arrogant, and I know that I said about George that he felt a bit too perfect. Like he always knew what to say. He was always the wisest of the group. I really enjoyed the banter between Jessica and Battler. That was really nice. I did not expect Maria to be 9-year-old. She acted like a 5-year-old. What I really appreciated was the amount of time that the servants got. That I mean, each servant was, although self-proclaimed furniture to the family, they each had their own personality. Shannon seemed somewhat clumsy, but very sweet and good-natured, to the point that she fell victim to the more ruthless and ambitious servants like Koda. I felt that Ganon was overly serious, but that later on was revealed to be a front, and he very much had trouble keeping his anger in check, especially when Shannon was involved. And Kumasawa, although the oldest, I got the impression that she was very sharp-witted and very clever and knew how to handle people very well. I expected a lot of her. With the talk of Kinzo's inheritance, there is also the legend of the gold that is introduced into the story, which is basically the first big mystery. The adults declare it a fantasy tale, a legend, and they spend their time arguing amongst each other. The 3 younger siblings group together to put pressure on Kraus in order to extort money, but Kraus shows his wits and is able to turn the situation around. I really liked that confrontation, because it showed how desperate those people were, but also how clever they were, how good they knew each other, and how they knew how to play to each other's weaknesses. Things are starting heating up between the family members that are discussing the inheritance. There's also the first, what I would call a sinister element introduced, which is the epitaph near the portrait of Beatrice, which hints to human sacrifices. It felt weird to me that everyone was so focused on the gold and on the prize they could get, when they solved that puzzle, but it felt like none of them were worried about the talk about the sacrifices, which felt very much like an instruction manual on how to resurrect a witch. The children go to the beach, and it is here that a particular scene happens, which is very interesting in hindsight. First of all, the dynamic between Maria and Butler is apparent. Even though they connected a while ago, there's a bit of a rift between them, since Maria very, very strongly believes in magic and its power, while Butler is very, very vocal about it, to the point where it upsets Maria. Nevertheless, Maria gives Butler and Jessica a charm in the form of a bracelet with a scorpion on it that is said to ward off magic. Then they bring up the riddle in the epitaph, and also all the killings described there. But they all seem very, very positive about it. Jessica even would say positive spin about it, saying it's okay if everyone dies because everyone will be revived and they will be left with a pile of gold. And I even note at that point in the video that it sounded way too easy. At some point, Butler insults Beatrice, and it's really the first time that Maria gets upset about it. She then tells Maria a story about how they feel the presence of Beatrice lurking about when the sun is down, and it makes Maria happy since it proves to her that people believe in Beatrice and Beatrice exists. As the kids return home to the guest house, the wind is picking up and the sky is getting dark, and as the typhoon approaches, it's almost as the typhoon marks the moment where the game shifts and things are going to get worse very, very quickly. It starts when they return to the rose garden and Maria gets upset because the rose that they marked earlier, the one that wilted alone, is missing. And Maria adamantly proclaims that it was in that right spot, but now it disappeared. Which in hindsight makes me think that maybe if that really was the right spot, Beatrice made that rose disappear just to stir things up. Maria is so upset to the point when Rosa returns that she is unable to calm Maria down, to the point where she resorts to smacking Maria in the face, which was the thing that absolutely shocked me, since I liked Rosa a lot. My first impression of Rosa was, compared to her siblings, that she was the calmer, more rational, more compassionate one. But she was so upset and rough with Maria that it almost felt like I was getting slapped myself. Because of Rosa's overwhelming emotions, she leaves Maria outside and storms off. Later on, when it is apparent that Maria is nowhere to be found, she and the children go back to look for Maria, and they find Maria in the rain, now holding an umbrella, which she claims was given to her by Beatrice. After dinner, Maria takes out a letter in which Beatrice introduces herself as Kinzo's alchemist, and that Kinzo made a contract with her in order to gain that fortune. And she surprises the family by claiming that once Kinzo dies, the contract will be void, and she will collect everything, plus interest. This letter causes a huge uproar in the family, since suddenly there's a risk that they will lose that inheritance. And as such, they continuously interrogate Maria as to who was it that gave her the letter and the umbrella, and if it was Beatrice, who was trying to impersonate. I remember making the comment that if it was an impersonation, it had to be an extremely good one. When I read the phrase collect interest, I immediately thought about that interest not being a monetary value, but instead being something that cannot be measured in wealth. So I was thinking about the souls of the family members. Maria was also claiming that she was Beatrice's messenger, which I thought made sense, since she was the one that was closest to Beatrice out of all the people here, and she was the one that believed the most in her. Discussion begins whether or not a 19th person is on the island and behind all of this, and people suspect each other of impersonating Beatrice. It is Kyrie who introduces us to the concept of spinning the chessboard around to think from the point of view from the culprit. And Butler and Kyrie have a very interesting discussion in which Kyrie thinks that there is no 19th person. And what I loved about that discussion was that she treated Butler like an adult, which was very, very different than how kids were treated before. Before that, there was a really clear distinction between adults and kids. But then Rudolph comes in, and he's visibly worn out, tired from the conference, and it surprises Butler that Rudolph is letting his guard down. Before Rudolph returns to the conference, he mysteriously claims that he feels he's going to be killed tonight, which in hindsight I still don't know what's that about. I don't think it was a claim from the other family members, like a threat, since if someone else threatened him in that conference room, why would he go back? But the only thing that makes more sense is that he maybe believes in what is written on the epitaph. This little peek into Nazi's life that we get shows us that she's not happy. She feels like some kind of outsider of the family because she married into it, and she's not treated with respect. Before this, there was a discussion whether or not the gold existed, and it is Kraus who shows her why he's so confident, because he has one gold bar hidden. I immediately thought that this was some kind of scam. I thought of a suitcase with cash lined up, but only the top layer of that cash was actual cash and the rest was fake. I'm not even sure if the other gold exists. And again, they said that there was a banker who they invited to check gold bars at random. So maybe all the gold does exist. It would be very difficult to fake that. The scene between Nasvi and Jessica is one of my favorites so far. It shows, although they were not on really good terms, they really do care about each other. And it is here that Jessica gives Natsuhi the charm, telling Natsuhi that it will protect her. Natsuhi really appreciates this, and since we've seen how she feels kinda isolated from the rest of the family, it's easy to understand why. Shannon accompanies the kids back to the guest house, and there it's revealed that there has been a shift in the servant schedule. All the servants but Goda are required to stay at the guest house. And at first I thought this was somehow Goda's doing in order to get more praise. My impression of Goda so far was that he was so cutthroat and trying to use other people's work to show off and impress people. But then it's revealed that it was in fact Kraus who requested this, since he didn't trust the other servants, because the other servants were close to Kinzo and served him directly, whereas Goda was the servant who has been serving for the least amount of time. It is also here that Kenji says that the guest arrives, that he would like to be notified immediately since tonight's guest would be in a special case. And in hindsight, it really clearly shows that he's referring to Beatrice and that he's aware of the demon roulette that's going to be played. George thinks out to propose to Shannon in secret in a very heartwarming scene, which I really loved, and it made me feel bad that I called George a perfect person before. Kanon and Genji head to the mansion to open up, and Kanon heads to the kitchen expecting Goda to have started breakfast, but Goda is nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Genji heads to Nasuhi's room to wake her up, and when Nasuhi wakes up, she has had a surprisingly good night's sleep, which she attributes to the charm that she has hung from the doorknob. And when she gets out of her room, she sees that there are weird thread-like patch marks on the door, which she attributes to some kind of prank. They head to the parlor, and it's there that they discover that not only Goda is missing, but also Shannon, Kraus, Kyrie, Rudolph, and Rosa. They think that the conference last night had been going on for a long time, so they must have gone outside to take a walk and cool their heads. Kanon is ordered to find Goda, so he goes out and comes back later, and he's quite hesitant to tell what he has found. He informs Genji, and together with Eva and Hideyoshi goes for a go to check out the storage shed, which shutter has some kind of weird circle drawn on it. They think it's graffiti, and I immediately thought it was blood, the same substance that was smeared on Nasuhi's door. They head back to the mansion quickly to get Nanjo, and Natsuhi is also informed. Then they hurry back outside. The kids obviously notice that something is off, and they head outside to check on it too. They finally head in, and it's revealed that the 6 people who are missing were murdered with their heads all smashed in. At first I wasn't sure why the heads were smashed in, but I think it's very clear eventually, when we will find Eva and Hideyoshi, that the heads are smashed in to conceal the use of the demon ice picks, in order to keep the question of whether there's magic involved or a human culprit still ambiguous. This is the tip screen where I can execute and resurrect people, and of the 6 that died, it's Kraus, where it said that this is the beginning of everything. Rudolph, Kyrie, Rosa, Goda, and Shannon. And I'm still not sure why Shannon's head was only smashed in half. At this point, I thought that each twilight written on the epitaph would mean one day. Everyone was obviously very devastated since they all lost someone very close to them. Butler lost both his parents, George lost his fiancée Shannon, Jessica lost her father. What struck me as really odd was that Maria, once they told her, really didn't show any emotion at all. In hindsight, it's obvious because she was expecting things to happen. Back in the mansion, phones are out due to the storm. There's no way to contact the outside world. Eva theorizes that it might have been Natsuhi and the servants who could have been behind this, since there's no way one culprit could have killed 6 people and tracked them to the storehouse. And Eva engages with Butler in the mental game of chess, turning the chessboard around. Of course, Eva is also aware that she is going to be suspected anyway, since she's the only child of Kinzo still alive. Butler goes out in the hallway to cool his head, and when he returns to the parlor, he finds the people there discussing the mark on the shutter. When suddenly Maria starts to act really weird. At that point in time, I was really creeped out when Maria suddenly went into witch mode. Now with the knowledge that Rosa actually felt burdened by Maria, it's obvious that Maria didn't have anyone close to her as a mother. So in that sense, it was obvious how much she looked up to Beatrice. And since we have seen Beatrice's mannerisms, it's really clear how Maria is trying to imitate her. even though at that point in the story I thought that Beatrice might have possessed Maria. Maria starts explaining the magic circle in great detail, including names of all the angels and the great kings and the Hebrew writing around it, and she says that it is used to break free from any prison and to gain power to gain freedom. She also knows that it doesn't exactly have to mean a physical prison, but it can also mean a release from mental bonds, such as ties of obligation and inescapable fate. I'll get back to this point later in my speculation part of the video. Butler heads to the kitchen for a glass of water, and right there he confronts the servants, thinking that they are holding something back. Maria in witch mode sneaks up on them and joins in on the conversation, and she claims that Butler can't see Beatrice since he doesn't believe and has no affinity or the right wavelength for that. She also claims that the only reason Butler is still alive is because of the charm she has given him. If not for that charm, Butler would have been the one that died in the shed with his head smashed in. He then discusses the letter with George and Jessica, talking about how Beatrice is going to take everything away that Kinzo had built up. And speaking of Kinzo, he's been missing for a while. And since Natsui was the last one who saw him, and Eva stuck a receipt in the door to check that, she obviously suspects Natsui of being the culprit. Tensions rise to the point where Natsui brandishing a gun almost explodes, basically, but Butler luckily is able to defuse the situation, bringing up a theory how Kinzo would have just hidden under the bed and snuck out at some other point. I brought up the theory that maybe there was some kind of hidden passage in Kinzo's study, like you have to pull some book in a bookcase in order to have a secret door slide open. Eva and Hideyoshi retreat to their room, but once it's time for dinner, they're not answering. Kanon and Genji are in front of the door, where they find another letter, and they discuss what to do. Genji orders Kanon to go get a tool to cut the chain, and to take Kumasawa-san with him. While Genji informs Natsui, when Kanon returns, to his shock and surprise, there is suddenly a weird symbol on the door. When the chain is cut and they enter the door, they find Aunt Eva lying on the bed, dead, with an ice pick stuck in the forehead, and Uncle Hideyoshi dead in the bathtub, with also an ice pick in his forehead. George is obviously devastated, and Butler cries and laments the fact that how cruel it must be for George to lose all his loved ones. At the same time, Butler vows to spin the chessboard around and not to cry anymore, since it's all useless anyway. There's a weird smell in the hallway as well, so Kanon and Kumasawa are sent out to investigate. Butler and George discuss the events, and they note how the most recent one, with the chain locked from the inside, makes it almost impossible to explain how a human culprit could have done such a thing. Upon which Maria laughs and asks if Butler is satisfied, since Butler wished for something to happen so that he wouldn't have to suspect his family members anymore. Maria explains that the magic circle on the door is the first magic circle of the moon, and it has two functions. The first function is to open a door, no matter how one may be locked, and the second one is if you're blocked by all directions, a door opens, which means once backed into a corner, you gain a certain amount of insight to get yourself out of that situation. Meanwhile, Kanon and Kumasawa hear a weird noise from the boiler room, shocking them since there's no one supposed to be there. Everyone else is somewhere else. Kanon rushes ahead, and he senses Beatrice's presence and loses her. He defies her, which obviously gets him killed by an ice pick to the chest. The weird smell is coming from a boiler, which houses a body, which turns out to be Kinzo, who is cooked. The survivors decide to barricade themselves into Kinzo's study, since that study only unlocks from the inside. They deem it the safest place. And around this time, they also start to suspect Maria, since her behavior is just too creepy, although it's noted that she's always been with someone else and as such has an alibi. In the study, Kinzo and his hobby of the occult is discussed and his sanity is questioned. They wonder if Kinzo wasn't simply delusional, and a weird rumor about his orphanage where he would train servants to sacrifice is brought up. Genji ashamedly admits that he thought that Kinzo was in fact delusional and he just went along with it. Butler moves to the portrait of Beatrice and the epitaph there, and he finally links that together with all the incidents that have been happening. Meanwhile, while Natsuhi, George, Jessica, and Butler were looking at the epitaph, a letter suddenly appeared on the desk, so Natsuhi suspects one of the remaining 4 people to be the culprit, and those 4 people are forced out of the study. At this point, Butler gives Maria her charm back, so Butler is no longer protected. After a while, they start to doubt their decisions, and are starting to hate themselves, because they feel like by forcing them out, they basically sacrificed them to Beatrice. There's a second page discovered in the letter that houses a magic circle, to the shock of everyone, and Butler goes to find out what it means, and laments the fact that with Maria not here, it would be way harder to discover what it means. Butler discovers that magic circle means to cause discord among the group, and they lament that they actually, by forcing those people out, play directly into the witch's hands. Things are moving very fast now. Suddenly, the phone in the study starts ringing, even though all phones were supposed to be out of service. And they hear some faraway weird singing, which they think is Maria, so they head down out of the study, even though the study was the only thing that could protect them, and they head to the parlor, which is locked. They unlock the door, they find the corpses of Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo in the room, covered in blood, with Maria standing with her face to the wall. Maria tells them that Beatrice told her to face the wall and sing a song for her, so she did. And with these deaths, the 7th, 8th, 6th twilight are all fulfilled. Natsuhi storms off to have a duel with Beatrice, which she loses, and once the kids arrive at the scene, Jessica is obviously heartbroken, but Maria happily mentions the rest of the resurrection ritual. On the night twilight, the witch shall revive, and none shall be left alive. Maria is very happy about this, since that means she will be taken to the Golden Land and be happy there. What happens next is not clear. The storm passed and the seagulls returned, but the police could never find out what happened. And only years and years later, a bottle was ashore with notes and Maria's letter. In that letter, Maria asked the reader to please uncover the truth. That was her only wish. And with this, the first episode ended. That was the recap. This was quite a lot longer than expected. Right now, I'm going to start with my speculation and theories. I know there is the tea party and the witches world or dimension or whatever you want to call it. And there are a few points there that I want to point out. But I'll get to that in a bit. The biggest themes and questions in this episode were the questions whether or not a 19th person existed, and if the murders were the work of a witch, magic, or if it was a human culprit. The farther we got to the end, the more and more evidence piled up, suggesting it was the witch's magic that caused all the murders, but I still have the feeling somewhere that I'm missing hints or information to put the theory together that humans were responsible. As long as that possibility exists that humans are the culprit. I can say for 100% that Beatrice is the perpetrator. And I guess that's the challenge, that Beatrice is used to battler. So it's our job to figure out the rules of our world. In the witch's world or dimension, we are introduced to Bernkastel, who I already knew from Higurashi, so I knew that she would appear in some form or capacity in this game. I just didn't know her involvement. That whole witch's world is just one big question mark for me at this point, and I think it was meant for that in this part of the game. Other than Bernkastel and Beatrice, there's also a mention of the Great Witch, Lady Lambda Delta, and I have no idea who that is. So other than the information that Bernkastel and Beatrice are polar opposites, I did not get any new information. Other than Lady Lambda Delta apparently being able to kill Beatrice's endless nature. Obviously, I have a lot of questions remaining, and before I list those and go over my honestly out there crazy theory, I just wanted to note a few small tiny details that I really liked. Like in Higurashi, there is a very clear dice motif, like the die of fate needing to be cast, and here in Umineko it's constantly referred to as a chessboard. And also in the note at the very end, the plea to please uncover the truth, that is my only wish, is exactly the same as in Keiichi's note. My first big discussion point is Beatrice herself. She is described by the servants and other people as a fickle witch. And I think that's perfectly demonstrated in her behavior, assuming that she was behind the murders. It has been shown the most clearly whenever a person challenged her by either defying her like Canon did or blatantly stating that they wouldn't believe in her, like Battler did. For example, when Battler wished for something to happen so that he didn't have to suspect his family members, he wished for something to happen that couldn't be done by any human. So what happened? Beatrice created a situation where Eva and Hideyoshi were killed behind a locked door. There's also the small, tiny situation with the charm on the doorknob in Nazi's room. If that charm was not there, I believe that she would have been killed. She would have been chosen by the demon toilet. And I don't think a human could have known that the charm was on that doorknob. Directly after the Hideyoshi and Eva murder, we have the situation in the boiler room where I think Kano's murder stood out from the rest. I think that one was unplanned. I think that murder was, I wouldn't say in a fit of rage, but it was very impulsive. It felt like because Kanon was so angry and said, I don't believe in you anymore, I defy you, she had to prove him wrong. She had to prove that she existed. And at the end of the game, we know why. Her magic only works. She only comes into existence if everyone believes. That's why she wants to prove all the non-believers wrong. So my big crazy theory is essentially that Maria may not have been responsible for all of this. She at least manipulated events in such a way that she would be one of the survivors until the end. Let me start by first saying that Maria was, aside from Kinzo, one person that was the most knowledgeable about the occult. So if I had to compare this game, this first episode, to a series, if I would compare this to Game of Thrones, then I would say that Maria was the one who knew how to play the game the best. Let me explain why. Now, according to the writing on the epitaph, in order to resurrect Beatrice and for the route to the Golden Land to open, everyone had to die, so you might wonder, why does it matter that Maria wanted to survive till the end? I think she wanted to survive till the end because that way there was a tiny window between Beatrice's resurrection and Beatrice's invitation to the Golden Land, so I think that Maria desperately wanted to be part of that. How did she do that? How did she manage to survive till the end? If you look at the writing on the epitaph, there are two things that I think stand out, and one of them is that the first twilight, the 6 sacrifices, are purely random. Aside from it being random, it is also the one moment then a person has the highest chance to be chosen and end up killed, since it is 6 sacrifices at once. I believe that Maria is somehow responsible for the magic circle on the door. I did not know what the religious significance was, so I looked up that verse. Basically paraphrasing, it said, "I am your servant. You have released me from my bonds." I might be totally wrong with my interpretation, but what I get from that, and the sense that with the help of that magic circle one can escape from a certain fate, I think Maria used that to avoid being picked by the key. Now, whether it was a coincidence that all the people that were picked by the key were in the mansion at the time, I don't know, I can't answer that. But I think that even if a person would be picked that wasn't in the mansion at the time, say George would be picked, then I think fate would have twisted it in a way that he would have ended up in the mansion, like how suddenly the schedule of the servants was changed by Krause, or how Shannon ended up in the mansion because she was a bit flustered and embarrassed. Then we have the second line on the epitaph, which in my opinion stands out since it's very specific, unlike the others. The others just basically say that a certain twilight is a certain kill in a certain place of the body, but the second one said that there was a requirement that there would be 2 people who were close, and those would be torn apart by other people. Only 2 people that would fulfill that requirement were Hideyoshi and Eva, and they were picked apart in the sense that they were regarded as suspicious or regarded as the culprits by the others. They were basically cast out. And of course, because Maria wasn't really close to anyone, in that sense, she was quite safe during the second twilight. Now the biggest argument why I could have been totally wrong with my crackpot theory is because I can't explain the fourth twilight, which is Kinso's death in the boiler. I think that kill was made to lure people there. But I can't explain why Kinso was the victim and why Maria was safe. The only reason I could think of that Kinso was killed because he was the only person that was alone and accessible by luring him out of his study, and that Maria was always with other people. But then again, as we've seen in the parlor at the end, being with multiple people does not guarantee your safety, so like I said, This is quite a weak point in my theory. I said that Kanon's death was different and impulsive, so that might be why Canon was targeted and not Maria. So maybe there's some element of luck involved. I did mention that Canon was killed because he was the embodiment of anger, and I'll get back to that in a bit. For the 6th, 7th, and 8th Twilight were the murders in the parlor. And if you think about it, if 4 people are picked, what are the odds that you are safe? Normally it would be 24%. But because Maria had her bracelet again, she was safe, and Beatrice could not touch her. Then again, even if Maria was spared, if Beatrice was cruel and she wanted to hurt Maria in another way, she could make Maria watch. But instead, she told Maria to face the wall and sing for her. And I think she did that to spare Maria, since she is kind to the people who believe in her. I realize while reading my theory aloud that it sounds really stupid and out there. That's what I thought, so I'm sharing it. Now, in the end, there is a little bit of a contradiction between Maria being happy to be taken to the Golden Land and then Maria's note saying that she's probably dead, but pleading to the reader to find out the truth, that she wanted to know the truth. So I think maybe the Golden Land wasn't what Maria expected. And speaking of expectations, remember the conversation on the beach where the kids were discussing the epitaph, including all the sacrifices? But also Jessica said that in the end, with the treasures that were bestowed upon them, everyone would be revived and everything would be back to normal, except with a pile of gold. And I said back then that it sounded way too good to be true, and I still think that is the case. I also said back then that the Golden Lands maybe a euphemism for heaven or something, which would be pretty warped. And what I meant by that is maybe the whole riddle or ritual is just a trap to lure people in. Because there's one thing I do not really understand, and that's the following to reach the goal line, which is the 10th Twilight. Like they said on the beach, how can one attain the power of the Golden Lands treasures if everyone died? So George suggested that maybe if you hold the key to the Golden Land, maybe you were excluded from the everyone who died part. But the Golden Lands treasures themselves are the thing that sounds a bit contradictory. Because this whole ritual with all the twilights and all the killings are the steps that need to happen in order to resurrect Beatrice. So the family only wins if they can find the gold by solving the puzzle in time. If time runs out, there is no draw. It was made very clear, if time runs out then Beatrice wins. Maria even said that the journey was over already. But then, if you read the treasures, and it said here that a person would obtain the treasure when this whole ritual is done, all the gold from the Golden Land would be theirs. All the dead souls would be resurrected. A resurrection of the love that was lost would happen, and which would be put to sleep for all time, meaning if this ritual is meant to resurrect Beatrice and is basically a win condition for Beatrice, because like I said, if time runs out, Beatrice wins, Then how is the fact that in the end the witch shall be put to sleep for all time? How is that fact a win condition for Beatrice? I wonder. For me, that is a big question. That is something that strikes me as thought. Does that mean that if a person who attains the power to Gondland's treasures, does that mean that he acquires the ultimate victory by having sacrificed everyone and defeated the witch, so the witch goes to sleep and everyone will be revived? That would suggest that there's another person involved in this play that was not among the other people that were killed. So the two biggest contradictions are how this is a win condition to Beatrice and how one could obtain this treasure, power of the Golden Land, even though no one should be left alive. Speaking of questions, I think one of the biggest question marks so far is Kinzo and his involvement in all of this. Since I attributed a lot of things to Maria and her knowledge, but I should not forget that Kinzo is also very knowledgeable in the occult, even more so than Maria probably, and I'm not sure what I can attribute to him, like the second magic circle. Well, it wasn't really a circle, but it was that mark on Hideyoshi and Eva's door, and I don't even know how Kinzo ended up in the boiler, but the fact that an ice pick was inserted in his forehead, and it was shown when Beatrice demonstrated how that happened, that they flew with such a velocity that they were embedded extremely deeply in the skull, so no ordinary human could do that. Enzo wanted to see Beatrice again, but he also locked himself up in his study, and the study was protected against magic. The doorknobs had the same scorpion charm in them. So like they said in game, they must have lured him out somehow to dispose of him. I have absolutely no theory as to how and why. It must be Beatrice herself, maybe, would have done that. Since I don't think that he would have left the room for any family member. Another thing I thought when we were reading through the conversation between Brancaster and Beatrice, when Brancaster was addressing, well, us as the player, she mentioned that Beatrice may have the name Beatrice, but it didn't necessarily mean she's one individual woman, which made me think that maybe she's some kind of manifestation of something. And I wrote down that maybe Beatrice is the embodiment of sin, since she has those devil's eyes picks. And she mentioned that when she killed Canon, Canon was killed because of his anger, and wrath is one of the sins. Plus the fact that when we started the tea party, we saw the name Purgatorio, so if I link the sins together with the name of Purgatory, one thing that comes to mind is Dante's Inferno. So I wonder if the people who died due to a stake pierced in the forehead died because they were sinful in one way or another. And in the ending, well, list or credits, however you want to call it, you saw the list how people died, and each stake had a specific name or demon attribute to it. In Canon's case, it's just gouged by the stake of Satan. But Beelzebub, Mammon, Lucifer and Satan are, I think, all different names for the devil, so I don't think one name corresponds with a specific sin. I think if somehow people can get rid of their sins, maybe that would be a way to oppose Beatrice. One thing I noticed I liked was all the mentions to when the seagulls would cry again. At first the seagulls would stop being around the island when the hurricane would approach, or typhoon. But maybe it could also signify that things were about to go very, very dark in the mansion itself. And I felt the seagulls would be some kind of symbolism for hope, since when the seagulls would return, it would signify a return to things going back to normal. Even though we saw at the end, seagulls returned, but nobody was left alive, so that isn't quite normal. Also, I liked how the clock, whenever a scene ended and time skipped, the closer we got to midnight, the bigger the clock was on the screen. To me, this really signified as some kind of impending doom, some kind of a doomsday clock. Right, I almost forgot. You know how in the tips list with all the characters, after I finished the game, I could execute and resurrect them to see their information before they died and after they died. This is a small, I wouldn't say Easter egg, but a funny thing I noticed. I can do the same to the witches here. Here is Beatrice, the golden witch who has lived for 1,000 years. And her likes, which are black tea and ice cream. She hates boredom and people who deny her existence. She has surpassed the limits of humans and, like demons, will sometimes appear in response to the summons made by humans to offer her power in exchange for a prize. But I can also execute her. What uses a stream to try and kill me despite being a mere human? Fire your bullets, and it will merely reflect back towards you, like light off a mirror. That's how Nasi died. However, it does exist just one way to kill me. You hold that method in the palm of your hand. I wonder what that means. Though I doubt one as mediocre as you would ever pull it off. Unless you're just fourth wall breaking to the point where I can just click off the application with my mouse. And here we have Ben Castle, the Witch of Fragments, who has lived 1,000 years. It is said she lives in a world where the concepts of fate and possibilities can be visualized. She observes the fate of humans and sometimes interferes. In other words, sometimes she is you, and sometimes she is your only friend. Understand? She likes wine and spicy foods. She hates boredom and people who never learn. She's basically Rika from Higurashi. Or maybe the other way around, Rika is just one of her incarnations. By constantly continuing to think, I will live forever. In other words, if I were to stop thinking, I could die at any time. However, once I start thinking again, I can also revive at any time. That's why I'm fickle and whimsical. I live as I please, die as I please, and revive as I please. But other than that, I don't think I have any more to say. I'm sure I'm forgetting some details. But this video is already extremely long. So I guess I'll wrap it up here. So yeah, these were my thoughts about the first episode, Umineko, and the things I picked up on. Like I said, I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of things, and there are a lot of things that I missed. And I really enjoyed this first episode. And although this video was my first attempt at making, well, a video that is not a visual novel let's play, it was quite challenging for me to structure this video and to edit this. I think I've been working around 3 days on this video because I talk slowly and I'm usually looking for words. So I'm editing a lot of pauses out of it. I really love making it though. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please let me know in the comments and leave a like if you like this. I'm really looking forward to episode 2. So as always, thank you all for watching and until next time.